Today, I'm going to tell you how the AAMC PREview is scored. It's very important to know how this situational judgment test is evaluated, what you're being ranked on, and how you're being scored and evaluated, right? And I'm going to give you some tips and reminders and maybe things that you haven't really thought of before regarding the AAMC PREview that will really help you succeed on this test. And before we get into it, I will introduce myself briefly. My name is Zhenya Krymchenko. I am a content manager here at BMO, and we have helped thousands of people pursue their academic and professional dreams. And I'm here to help you ace this fairly new and challenging situational judgment test. And before we get into the details of what you're being evaluated on and how you can succeed and score in the 90th percentile here on this test, I want to preface that everything I'm sharing with you today is something we share with our students in one-on-one consultations. So we're not holding anything back. And I will explain to you everything you need to know about how the AAMC PREview is scored. To begin with, the most important thing you must remember, this is the AAMC PREview test. So the AAMC is obviously very much involved in the development of this test. And what they're really evaluating here, what you have to keep in mind at all times while you're preparing for this test, is the 8 core competencies that the AAMC outlines that are really important for future medical students. The 8 competencies are service orientation, social skills, teamwork, cultural competency, reliability and dependability, ethical responsibility to yourself and others, resilience and adaptability, and capacity for improvement. So those are the 8 core competencies that you're being tested on, and each scenario that you're presented with in the AAMC PREview test will try to evaluate your suitability based on these 8 competencies. So again, you're not being really tested on competencies that a practicing physician would possess, but you're being tested on competencies that would make you a good and, a suitable candidate for medical school and for medical profession. The next important thing to know about how the AAMC PREview is scored is really the structure of the test. This test is slightly different from more famous situational judgment tests like CASPER or MMI. So in the AAMC PREview exam, you have 30 written scenarios that are based on real-world situations that you may experience in medical school as a medical student. And, they're set in different environments, in different settings, like educational, healthcare, or other real-life settings that you would experience as a medical school student. So each scenario that you face also comes with 48 responses to these scenarios. And they range in, possible actions that you could take to resolve the dilemma that you're presented with. And there's a total of 186 responses on the entire exam. And most importantly, of course, regarding the structure, is that each of these responses that you're presented with for each scenario, you must rate. So you rate each response based on the effectiveness of these responses. You can choose either rating of very effective, effective, ineffective, and very ineffective. And the total exam time is 75 minutes. So you'll be able to rate these responses in this allotted time. Most importantly, and I would say this is the most important thing to remember about being scored on the AAMC PREview and your score for each response, is that a response doesn't need to have any effective responses or any very effective responses or any ineffective responses or any very ineffective responses. What do I mean by that? You're not rating these responses. You're not saying, oh, this is better than the next, or, you're not comparing the responses. You are approaching each response as it is and giving it an effectiveness rating. So that means that in a scenario, let's say you have 8 responses, all of them could be ineffective or very ineffective. The AAMC does not expect you to find a response for each of the ratings in the responses. You must remember that in any given scenario, all the responses can be very ineffective or very effective with no options to choose an effective response or ineffective response. So this is a really important part of the scoring that you must remember. You're not expected to find a response for each of the 4 categories here. You are just responding to and rating each response based on its effectiveness. So don't get stuck on a response or don't get stuck on a scenario and say, well, there must be an effective response to this. There might not be. So take each response as it is and give it effectiveness rating. The next really important thing to know about AAMC scoring is that you're awarded a full point, a full credit if your response matches the medical educator's rating. The people who designed this test. And so let's say you rated a response as very ineffective and the medical experts also rated it very ineffective. That means you will get 1 point for this response. Okay, you will be awarded a partial credit for a rating that comes close, or at least is in the same category as that of a medical expert. So let's say you rate a response as very ineffective, but the medical expert rated the response as ineffective. That means that they're still in the same kind of category, but you will only get half a point because ineffective and very ineffective are slightly different. And we'll get into that in a second with a sample passage and responses, okay? And you will get no credit if your rating does not match the medical educator's rating at all. So that means they're completely in different categories. That means that, for example, if you rated a response as ineffective and the medical expert rated the response as effective, you get 0 points. So a really important thing to remember as you start preparing for this test is that there's one major element that divides these 4 responses into 2 groups. So ineffective and very ineffective versus effective and very effective. And that one element is that ineffective and very ineffective responses will result in negative impact, either for sure or hypothetically, whereas in effective and very effective responses will not result in negative impact. That is very important. So while of course we want you to score a whole credit, a whole point for each response, half points are awarded if you can at least identify that this is effective or very effective versus ineffective and very ineffective. Look for that negative impact. So if a response may result or will certainly result in negative impact, that's always ineffective or very ineffective response. So continuing on about, how you're actually rated. So you will get a raw score out of 186 responses, and it will be converted to a total score on a scale from 1 to 9, 1 being the lowest, 9 being the highest. And the student, actually you, will receive a total score of 1 to 9 and a percentile ranking within 30 days of taking the test. So you must be wondering, what is a good AAMC PREview score? We at BMO encourage our students to score at least in the 93rd percentile. So they would have a total score of 7. So that means that a really good AAMC PREview score is either 7, 8, or 9. So in the 93rd percentile, 98th percentile, or in the 100th percentile, that would constitute a really good AAMC PREview score. Before you take the real test, we strongly encourage you to take simulations of AAMC PREview. The simulations they must be taken in realistic environment and realistic settings. And it's always best to have some feedback from a professional who understands this test and understands how to do well on this test. So we usually tell our students that they're ready to take the test after scoring 7 or higher in 3 consecutive AAMC PREview simulations, right? So it's consistent scoring. only after seeing that a student has got the hang of the AAMC preview, the scoring and the rating, and, understands the 8 core competencies that they're being tested on, do we allow students kind of to do the real test. And now that you know the background on how you're being scored in the AAMC preview, let's look at a sample passage. So those ratings of ineffective, very ineffective, effective, and very effective are more clear to you, what you're looking for here, and how you can start preparing for this test using our strategies. So here's a sample scenario. During class, your professor observes you participating in a role play exercise with one of your classmates. You're acting as a doctor, and your classmate is acting as an angry patient. The role play is tense but stays on course. You think you performed well, but after your classmate gives you unexpected negative feedback that you missed several opportunities to comfort the patient and calm the situation. You are now expected to attend a debriefing session with your professor. So that's the scenario. And what we usually teach our students is that before they even read the responses, they need to do 3 things. So take 3 steps before they even read the responses to be able to start kind of categorizing responses. Okay. So the 3 steps are: they first must identify which core competencies are being evaluated in the scenario. So remember back to the 8 core competencies, read the scenario a couple of times, and identify which core competencies are being tested. So in this scenario, we would say that capacity for improvement is probably the one that is most obvious and the major core competency that is being evaluated in this scenario. And, you're also being tested on your social skills, right? On your ability to interact with your classmate, with your professor, and of course, in the future, with a patient. So that's the step number 1, identify the major core competencies that are being tested in the scenario. Second step is very common for most situational judgment tests. So it kind of stays the same for the AAMC preview, for Casper, for MMI. And the second step is find the pressing issue. So what is the main problem here in the scenario? And in this case, because we identified the core competencies that are tested, we can kind of see what the problems are. So first of all, you need to constructively use the feedback you received to improve your clinical skills, your patient interactions, which are very important for a future medical student and future physician. And number 2, you want to keep a positive and professional relationship with your classmate and with the professor, right? So these 2 pressing issues are exactly tied to capacity for improvement and your social skills. And step number 3 that we encourage our students to take before they even read the responses is to find the affected party who is being affected by this situation here. And the 2 parties that are being impacted are yourself and your classmate in this scenario. Okay. So now that we identified and took these 3 steps, we can now get into reading the responses and starting to get a feel of which rating you would give each response. Now we'll read the responses first. You can pause the video after I finish, and you can kind of see what you would rate each response. And then we'll go over each reading and explain the rationale behind each rating, which is very important so you can get a hang of the strategy that you can use to rate these responses. So here are the responses provided. Number 1, tell your classmate that only the professor is qualified to provide feedback. Number 2, explain to your professor that you understand you missed some opportunities during the exercise and discuss how to improve. Number 3, skip the debriefing session because you have already received feedback. Number 4, ask your classmate how you could improve your performance in the future. Number 5, explain to your professor why you were satisfied with your performance. Number 6, ask your classmate if they would be willing to practice role-playing in advance of your next exercise. And ask your classmate not to bring up the negative feedback during your debriefing session. And the last response we're given is confirm your classmates' feedback with your professor. So take a moment to give rating to each of these responses, and we'll go over the response again, its rating, and the rationale behind the rating. So the first response we're given is tell your classmate that only the professor is qualified to provide feedback. So the rating you would give this response is ineffective. And why is that? Although you know the professor's feedback is important, you are dismissing your classmates' feedback, which is not a great way to demonstrate your capacity for improvement and openness to feedback. So you're kind of denying yourself the opportunity to become better and improve your clinical skills and your patient interaction skills. And you can always learn from your classmates, from other people. So you are really denying yourself this opportunity. And of course, another negative action here is that you're kind of being confrontational. You are telling your classmate that their feedback is not important, and you are making it difficult to collaborate with you. Other classmates might not want to be paired up with you next time. And, this really demonstrates poor social skills, the way that you're being confrontational. So that in the end, you resolve the situation with a negative impact. You don't really resolve the situation, but your action results in negative impact for you because you're not improving yourself, and for your classmate because you're being confrontational and they might never want to work with you again. The next response we have is explain to your professor that you understand you missed some opportunities during the exercise and discuss how to improve. So this response is very effective. Not only are you taking on responsibility, you are being open to the fact that you might not have done as well as you could, and you're open to feedback, you're open to improvement, and you take it into your own hands to become better. Right? So you really show strong capacity for improvement. You're acknowledging the value of your classmates' feedback. And of course, you're asking for advice. You're asking for guidance on how you can become a better student and, in the future, a better physician. So you're really taking the steps to learn from your errors, and you're showing great social skills because, again, you take initiative and respectfully approach your professor to understand what you did wrong, or if not wrong, what you missed and what you can improve on. The third response is skip the debriefing session because you have already received feedback. So it's not very responsible, of course, but this is a very ineffective response. You are skipping the meeting. It shows very, very bad reliability and dependability, which is a core competency that you get, that you're required to show. And in this scenario, of course, it's, this other competency is being kind of introduced by this response. So you are skipping out on the session where you could improve, and you're really not fulfilling your academic obligation. That's first. But you're also not open to improvement, or you're not open to becoming a better medical student, a better physician. You have this opportunity to learn from your professor and hearing maybe what your classmate could tell you. So you're really just showing really poor capacity for improvement. And of course, in the end, bad social skills again, because you're literally ignoring the responsibility. You're just skipping out on a person who made an appointment with you. And the greatest negative impact will, of course, be on you, which is, also brings up another core competency, which is ethical responsibility for yourself and others. And you're negatively impacting your future as a medical student, your future as a medical professional. So this is just a very bad response. The next response we have is ask your classmate how you could improve your performance in the future. So this is also a very effective response. Why is it very effective? Well, because you are very open to the classmates' criticism and their feedback, and you're actually seeking help from them. Even though it's not the professor, you're still seeking self-improvement. You want to demonstrate openness to their feedback, and you will probably learn something from your classmate, which again shows a great responsibility and great capacity for improvement. And because you're validating your colleague from medical school, by asking their opinion, you're strengthening your relationship. Your social skills are demonstrated here as well. So you will definitely both benefit. On the one hand, you will benefit by learning what the feedback is, how you could have improved your performance, and you will benefit by creating this relationship with the classmate. So it's only positive impact that you're making for yourself and your classmate. The next response we have is explain to your professor why you were satisfied with your performance. The main reason why this response would get a rating of ineffective is because you're taking a defensive side. So you're not really taking criticism openly. So you're really cutting your opportunity for improvement. So that's why the response is ineffective. The next response we have is ask your classmate if they would be willing to practice role play in advance of your next exercise. So this is a very effective response. It's kind of close to another response we have where you ask your classmate on how you can improve, right? So this is taking it sort of even further, still just as effective, very effective. You are demonstrating strong social skills by reaching out to your classmate, by validating their feedback to you. And you do want to, you're showing a real desire for improvement. You're taking extra time to improve your patient skills, or, the role-playing skills in this case. And, you propose a real practice. So if this student agrees, you will have, a buddy, a new person to hang out with and to learn with. So you will strengthen that friendship between yourself and your colleague. And of course, you will learn something that will make you a better student. So the impact is only very positive, and the response solves all the pressing issues. The next response we have is ask your classmate not to bring up the negative feedback during your debriefing session. This response is very ineffective. Why? Well, first of all, you're obviously trying to keep the classmates' comments away from the professor. It's dishonest. It's just not a great way of dealing with feedback. So it will really hinder you in so many ways. First of all, you'll probably lose respect of your classmate. Second of all, you'll have no opportunity for growth if that's the way you respond to feedback. And it's a really bad demonstration of all the core competencies. So capacity for improvement, social skills, responsibility to yourself and others, dependability, you'll be seen as a liar. So it's just a really, really ineffective response. You will just negatively impact every party, including yourself and your classmate. And most importantly, it's just the result of this action and leads to nothing but a worsened situation. The next response is confirm your classmate's feedback with your professor. So this is an effective response. And why is that? Well, I think you obviously recognize the potential value of the classmate's feedback. And, you show that you're open to feedback. You show that you're capable and willing to improve. But you also want to confirm that the feedback is appropriate, right? Will it actually improve your clinical skills? And, there's a possibility that the professor will even give additional feedback. So there's even more chance, more opportunity for you to improve. And of course, it will also potentially strengthen a relationship between you and the classmate, because again, you do validate that they might be right, but they might not be also. And why this response is not very effective is because you're not guaranteed this outcome of additional feedback or additional improvement from the professor. So here you are. We went through a sample AAMC PREview passage with responses and ratings and strategies that you can use. Remember that you're being scored on your reaction or your ability to demonstrate the 8 core competencies always return to these as you're preparing for the test. And on test day, always remember that you must identify which competencies you are being tested on. This will significantly increase your ability to score well. If you know the competencies, you know how they can be demonstrated, and you recognize within the scenario how the competencies are being demonstrated or not. And do remember that you are also being scored on your ability to assess the level of effectiveness of each response. That means that the responses that are presented to you, none of them may be effective or none of them may be ineffective, right? You are really responding to each response separately. Do not try to find an effective, a very effective, ineffective, and very ineffective response in each scenario. They might not be there. Remember that you're responding just to the response itself, and the AAMC is not gonna make sure that each scenario has all 4 types of responses present. That's very important to remember. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and comment. Of course, comment if you have any questions. We'll get back to you as soon as possible with an expert response. So I hope this video helps you prepare for this challenging exam, and we'll see you next time. Bye.